Back, everybody. Thank you for your patience. We have concluded executive session with nothing to report out. And if we could just all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. And Trustee Trent, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Okay, just a reminder of the emergency exits immediately to the rear of the room and to my right and to the audience left. In the event of an emergency, please exit in an orderly fashion through these doors. This is a smoke-free school district. Smoking is not permitted in the building or anywhere on the grounds. This is also a hate-free and bully-free school district. And with that, we'd like to, so we can expedite the meeting to get right into the presentations. The board is going to take up just two agenda items for board consent. One would be under F1 for approval of a student council field trip, and then also G1 for approval of a foundation grant from the South Country Education Foundation. So, Mr. Superintendent, your recommendation, please.
Thank you, President Felice. So the administration recommends approval of curriculum items reflected in Schedule F1.
Do them both together, please.
Sure. Administration recommends approval of curriculum items reflected in Schedule F1 and approval of business items reflected in G1.
Okay. So we need a motion and a second to approve F1 and G1. Motion, please. Motion by Mr. Trent, seconded by Trustee Flippin. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please raise your hands. Seeing all hands raised, the motion passes unanimously. And that will bring us right back to, do we have any cards for commentary? Good, we can race through that. And
I'll
now,
just make a comment that what we've just approved are the grant summaries from the South Country Education Foundation. There are 11 pages.
I thought he was going to, I thought the superintendent was going to talk about that.
I didn't know.
No, that's in the next meeting.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the reason we approved it during this meeting is some of the grants were timely, and there are some events that are happening between now and the next board meeting. I'll do the proper recognition of the South Country Education Foundation at our next meeting, which I'm going to invite them
Okay.
to.
Okay.
Thank you.
That brings us up to the superintendent's report.
Promises. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Get right to it. So, for the public saying, I want to thank everybody in attendance, all of our directors. I will be giving all of you a shout out in a minute. We had a wonderful performance for OW Crits for the third grade. It is Board Appreciation Week, which was last week. We reserved it this week, so I want to thank again the board for their continued service to the district. Moving on, it is officially fall in South Country. I had the benefit last weekend of visiting a couple of fall festivals. First at the Bellport Middle School Fall Festival, which has moved inside because of the continual rain. Our district clerk, Ms. Flynn, was there with her granddaughter. And one of the comments that she made was how lovely our middle school student volunteers were that she's pictured with in the picture there. Everyone did a great job, the PTA, our Bellport Middle School staff, and our Bellport Middle School students who were there to help the kids have a good time. I also went to the Crits Halloween dance last Friday night. There's a picture of Principal Mazziotti that's a little small, but she certainly had a lot more patience with all the mayhem going on in that gymnasium with hundreds of kids. According to the PTA, over 500 people attended. So it was a really successful event. Parents were in costume, kids were in costume. They had a great DJ, a lot of fun. I also went to the Brookhaven Fall Festival, again, which had to be moved indoors. But that too was very well attended. Again, a big shout out to our PTA, the Brookhaven Building Administration and staff that were there to support, our students for this offering, and a lot of the village businesses that set up tables for parents and students to make purchases. Coming this week, on Thursday, we have Trunk or Treat Street at Kramer. That's going to be occurring from 6 p.m. until 6:30 p.m. On Friday, Frank P. Long will be hosting their own Trunk or Treat. That's Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. And the high school will be having their Trick or Treat Street at the high school from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Unfortunately, I will not be able to attend those events as much as I love them, because I will be attending the New York State School Boards Association annual convention up in Buffalo, sunny Buffalo. But as luck may have it, the temperature calls for about 70-degree temperature and sunshine in Buffalo, so I will take it. But really excited about going to the pre-convention law seminar. We're going to be talking about strategies in managing student behavior in school, employee religious accommodation rights, special education update, enhanced exposure to liability and other developments, school board member use of social media, I'll get back to you on that, collective bargaining in an uncertain economy, and basically the state ed department's perspective on the state of education in our state. Some other seminar topics that I'm interested in attending is amplifying student voices for social justice, which we kind of do with our civics instruction. Some more civics engagement seminars supporting students' social emotional health, which certainly is a huge sort of priority for us, and a comprehensive approach to cybersecurity. Some of the things that I think I'll be tackling. I see Ms. Krista Albrecht looking at me, our Director of Technology, saying, yes, I'll come back with some information to scare us all. But yeah, when it comes to cybersecurity, some of these presentations tend to be a little alarming. I'm going to bring back Civics Day because, and again, the purpose of Civics Day education is basically to get students engaged in the study of the rights and duties of citizenship. You know, how do you become an activist more than just sort of speaking to, you know, having likes on social media. This picture here on the left, I want to give a special shout out to recent graduates Hannah Carlson, Caitlin Foley, Erica Wilson, who advocated for a school ambassadors program to create more experiences for our special education students to intermingle with our general education students. That's come to fruition not just at the high school, but at the middle school as well. Some other sort of Civics Day presentations that have come to fruition is the adding of a late bus for our student athletes at the high school. We're establishing a wellness committee to look at our food services because students wanted some more diversity in their food that we offer in our schools. There's a crosswalk that was painted in town. But one of the most notable ones that we actually had a presentation here at the board was a presentation made by the student on single color graduation gowns. Students surveyed the entire student population, and they were all in support of single color gowns for a variety of reasons. And it's something also that I was a part of in my former district. I can say now that some of the feedback we received from community members, because you know the students, the class of 2023, really wanted this enacted last year. But I said, you know, you have to kind of speak to the community, and sometimes decisions that have big implications, especially on something that's been a tradition here in South Country, has implications. So we want to hear stakeholder voices, and we did just that. So. You know, one of the concerns I heard from parents in speaking to our PTA council was that, you know, one of the things that they enjoyed about the tradition of having 3 different colors, one color as a designation for National Honor Society, was that it was a visible representation of student accomplishments, and they felt like that would be lost. And so, again, the idea of moving towards single color gowns is to create uniformity so that we celebrate graduation. Everybody can graduate of Bellport High School, regardless of your gender, regardless of your participation or grade. If you earned the credentials for a high school diploma, you're graduating. So the idea is that we're not servicing one specific population. It's about unifying our entire sort of school population. At the same time, we want to acknowledge the fact that parents do like and feel that pride their student or their child worked really hard, earned great grades, our National Honor Society, for example. That too should also be acknowledged. So I want to invite our Director of Guidance, Ms. Jennifer Sneevil, to stand up with me to kind of go over what we're proposing. And I'm going to say publicly to the board that this proposal has my full support as a superintendent of schools. I think it's something that's consistent with recommendations made by not just the State Education Department, but really has been the trend in the high schools and colleges across the country. So I'll let Ms. Sneevil speak for a minute, because I know she's really passionate about it, and I'll give her the floor.
Thank you, everybody. So as Mr. Santana said, the goal of this is unifying our graduating class. Every one of our students are celebrating the same thing on this day, and it's receiving a high school diploma. So one of the things the students that made the presentation last year, to all if you remember, was having one color gown so that everybody would be unified in celebrating their graduation. So in doing that, we are proposing having a white gown for all students, as well as a white cap, and a red, white, and blue tassel to signify our school colors.
It should be noted that the students, through a survey,
Yes.
picked color white.
They
So
did.
that's who came from students.
So we want to also recognize our students in the National Honor Society. So like we have in the past, we want to continue for these students to stand out amongst their peers as our academic leaders. These students would be wearing an electric blue National Honor Society stole with the National Honor Society crest, as well as having the gold tassel, which is the National Honor Society color. So these students will definitely be recognized for all of their academic and volunteer achievements. But one thing we also recognize is the fact that every student at Bellport High School has a personalized experience when they're there. They're involved in different clubs, different activities, they volunteered at different events, they're in different honor societies. And currently, we don't recognize those things at graduation. So that's where the students had proposed the addition of honor cords. And this is a way for students, although we are unifying everyone with one color, this is where they can be honored for all the things that they did during their experience at Bellport High School. So as you can see, there are cords for all the honor societies, not just National Honor Society, but also some of our other activities. There's a cord for varsity athletics. There's a cord for being involved in any of our clubs, activities, or intramurals, one for being a member of the PTSA, one for volunteering and donating at the blood drive, and there's also one for our students that participate in BOCES. BOCES actually gives them those cords. So this is a new addition to our graduation regalia, and it's a way for our students to recognize their experiences while with us. Another tradition that we plan to continue is our graduation with distinction. For those that don't know, Bellport High School students have the opportunity in the spring of their senior year to apply for graduation with distinction, which within each of our academic areas. Students fill out an application showcasing that they have expertise in a specific area. And if they have met all the criteria previously set, they are given a certificate as well as a medal to wear at graduation. So we do plan to continue that.
And how do they know to submit that application?
There is lots of notification, it's in our course guide, but we also put it on the Google Classroom, there's an announcement, we talk about it in homeroom. So there's about 3 months where they have to apply, so it's a very long window. It starts in the spring, and we encourage students in many methods. We also email it out to the parents so that they can see it. Yep. So we plan to continue that. As you can see, it's all of our academic departments. And basically, for example, if you have a 90 in all your classes in a specific subject, as well as on the Regents exam, you'd be able to get this award. If you're participating in a certain club, things like that, those help with those awards. So the big question, what does it actually look like? This is an example of the white gown with the white cap, the red, white, and blue tassel. And this is what we hope all of our students will be able to wear at graduation. But adding some of that extra regalia. So that is an example of one of our graduation with distinction medals, as well as 2 of the honor cords. So the student will be able to showcase what they participated in and what they really enjoyed about their time at Bellport High School. And then finally, adding the National Honor Society. So you can see this student is wearing the National Honor Society stole, which really stands out against that white gown. They also have some honor cords and graduation distinction medals. Based on, go ahead.
I'm sorry, her cap is wrong, right?
Yeah, so there's no gold tassel, we didn't have any extra at the moment, but she would also have a gold tassel, that is a good catch.
Trustee Trent, observant, oh man, nothing passes here.
That
I
is correct.
apologize, I'm sorry.
No, apologize. It's a good catch.
We searched for the gold tassels, we didn't have any, but that is, so that person would also have the gold tassel. But this really shows you how somebody that's in National Honor Society that has really achieved academically is really going to stand out. And this is everybody all together, so you can kind of get a look of what the differences would be. We really want students to feel unified in their goal and their achievement of graduation, while also allowing them to celebrate their personal achievements. And this really does that for our students. And I think the biggest piece for me is that our students are the ones that propose this. They're the ones that we're showing them by taking an active role in their community and an active role in civics, they are able to make change.
And I'm gonna get a little sciencey in saying that, white light represents the whole color spectrum together. And when you put a prism to it, it separates the colors into the rainbow. So it's a nice kind of like philosophical concept to think about what the white represents for our district, given our diversity. So kind of got a kick out of that as well. So, initially, I think sometimes, people, change. It's not easy sometimes, but I think this is a change that's going to better serve the community, certainly the kids, I say kids, the young adults, certainly are in favor of it, and I think it's going to look really beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Stevo. Moving on, again, we're going to have a data presentation in a minute. I just want to emphasize the importance of state testing. For a couple of years, the narrative has been this opt-out movement. There are still some school districts that look at almost 80% opt-out rates. What this does is that, what's changed from the beginning is that the test scores aren't associated with teacher evaluations anymore. It's really to get a good gauge of where students are at, especially post-pandemic, to see if there are any actual achievement gaps affecting the different demographics groups in our district. And, just to sum it up really quickly, we want to make sure we have an accurate sample size so that we know what we're working with. When Ms. Doyle has her presentation, you'll see the participation rates in each of our respective exams. But one of the things that superintendents talk pretty frequently about is how do we change kind of the mindset of the opt-out movement? Because, again, graduation requirements, the Blue Ribbon Commission is supposed to come out with findings in November. Is there going to be any changes to graduation requirements? But our understanding is that Regents exams are still going to be required for graduation, which are standardized tests. A lot of the trades require tests. Certainly if you want to go on to college, even though the College Board exams are being used less and less, they're still an important part of the college application process. Certainly if you want to do a profession like being a doctor, you have the MCATs, lawyers have the LSATs. So, at what point do kids start getting practice in standardized tests? And so I think that's something that we really have to start looking. And it also provides data points for a school district to kind of work with. So that's another pitch that we'll kind of continue to talk about and asking parents really to consider the tests. And again, the tests aren't necessarily used against children. I think that was part of the narrative in the past. But certainly can identify students that need a little bit more help and remediation. That said, there's a lot going on. Lots of ways to keep in touch with the district. In the interest of time, I'll breeze right through it. But go to our website. Our social media handles have really expanded. There's a lot of great posts sharing all the great things that are happening in our school district from all the various departments that are represented here tonight. And before, I'm sure I'm taking a little bit of Beth Doyle's thunder away, but I do want to thank all of our directors, Monica Tetuan, Jackie O'Hagan, Jennifer Stevo, Jessica Prush, Carrie Carlson, Patrick Hayes, Jack Burke, there you go, representing all our various departments for all the fantastic work they do. We have a great agenda set up for our superintendent's conference day, which is coming up election day. So I'm really excited about the work that they've been doing, and I just want to show my appreciation in a public setting. So thank you all. And of course, our teachers, always give a shout out to our teachers and PTA members. Thank you for all you do. And Mr. Kai Watkins, our restorative coach, who has been engaged in some CPI training that's been very well received by our staff. So thank you all for everything you do for your district. And of course, my cabinet that's behind me, Mr. Briggs, Mr. Geek, Ms. Doyle. Thank you.
All right, that brings us up, hang on. That brings us up to trustee and advisory committee reports. Trustee Kavanaugh, would you like to begin?
Just briefly, Vice President Hayes and I attended the Teaching and Learning Committee meeting, which I think we both agreed had a lot of positive news, chaired by Ms. Doyle. Mr. Burke shared with us the additional AP STEM classes and STEM clubs that are in existence now in the high school. All very exciting stuff, and we discussed a diagnostics program that has been used by the lower grades to address learning loss that I guess has been scaled up now to the high school. That's just two of the items. Overall, just left the meeting with a really good feeling about the future of academics in our district. So thank you to everybody that was involved.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Trent?
No, nothing to add.
Okay, trustee Brooklyn?
Just two quick things from the Nassau Suffolk School Board meeting I attended last week. The Nassau County President of the Superintendent Association is Mr. Santana's former mentor, Maria Rihanna, and she had a couple things to say. One of the first things was, and I guess it's a question, but it was discussion on Proposition 1, which will be on the New York State ballot this year. Are we going to promote that or just educate people at that, even though it doesn't affect us on our budget flyer?
Yeah, so basically, it's increasing the debt ceiling for city school districts. So there's a handful of small city school districts. Glen Cove is one of them.
There's two. It's Glen Cove and Long Beach. There's a total of 57. It's 57 districts in the state. They cannot have debt that goes above 5%. Every other district is 10%. It creates problems for them in a big way. So they're asking for some support and awareness on that vote, because propositions are always a little difficult to pass. She kind of segued into something that was a little bit, I thought was pretty important, and I learned a little bit. And she talked a lot about the difficult year that superintendents or the schools in Nassau County had, and that, their superintendent who was in service who passed away, which I'd known about. That happened, I think, at the beginning of the school year or in the August, I believe.
It was in spring, it was during a meeting of
Yeah,
superintendents.
well, what struck me about it was worth mentioning is that when she had her episode and passed away, she was on the phone with the board president. I didn't know that. So it just kind of reminded me of the constant work and communications we all have and how life kind of gets in the way sometimes. The other thing she talked about a lot was the Farmingdale tragedy and how local school districts on Long Island and upstate in the area really came and rallied around Farmingdale. And a couple things I learned, the students on those buses, and it was a lot, I didn't realize how many students from Farmingdale were on. I think there was at least 3 or 4 buses loads, right? I learned that the superintendent at Farmingdale's had 2 children on buses 2 and 4, and it was bus 1 that had the accident. So I can only imagine, knowing what happened and how soon it is, knowing that. But she talked a lot about the support the school districts in the area of the accident provided to students. Those students who were unharmed were taken to schools, and they were cared for, and there was crisis counseling on hand for them and things like that. So I just thought it was worth mentioning, that's all. I thought it was really nice, made me feel good about being a part of education in a small way. So, that's it, that's all I got.
Vice President Hayes?
I won't repeat what Tara said, but
I left you a couple of items to address.
It was a wonderful meeting.
It was.
But I wanted to add to what you just said. That's also the feeling that I've gotten from going to some of the training sessions from the School Board Association, that there's a big group of board members out there that are supportive of each other. And similarly, I'm hearing the same for our administrators, and I'm just glad that that all exists.
I had one more thing I forgot from that meeting, I'm sorry.
Sure.
At the conference next week in Buffalo, Fred Langstaff is gonna be honored posthumously. If you don't know Fred Langstaff, he was a former Sayville School Board member for many years. He was the president of New York State School Board Association. He was our Area 12 director for many years. And your comment about advocating, he's one of the first people I met when I started advocating in Albany and going to a lot of workshops at NYSBA. He really reeled me into advocacy beyond our district's borders. He was an amazing human being. I was proud to have gotten to know him. If you were ever at a school board function, you know who he was. He had white hair, and he always had like Madras pants and a seersucker jacket and goofy socks. He was known for his socks. But his family is traveling to Buffalo to accept the award on his behalf. So when you're up there, take note and take a picture from me, will you? Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, and just quickly, I would just go through that I attended the annual New York State School Board Association Business and Voting Delegates meeting where they vote on all the proposals that they plan on lobbying Albany for. There was well over 50 proposals. We logged on at 3:30, and the meeting didn't get over to near midnight. So
11:53.
yeah.
They talked about it at the meeting, so you deserve something for that.
Just a night's sleep, that's all. But it was, like Chris said, the advocacy that goes into putting these proposals together. What I found last year when I attended the meeting is there were a couple of boards and delegates who were advocating for their personal wishes. And it just took up a lot of time. Well, this year it took up even more. So they did send out a good survey after that to ask for suggestions as to how we can expedite this meeting, because the work is so important. Maybe do it over 2 nights, but to do it in 1 night, it was really, I have a couple of friends who are also board members, so we were texting each other to keep each other awake. But it's good work. And then, so the summaries will be coming out, and I'll share that with the board. And
To
we'll
that
see.
point, I'm sorry to keep, because this took up a big portion of the meeting, I didn't want to mention because I knew you were on the meeting.
Okay.
They are discussion, there was a healthy debate on how, or what we can do to recommend streamlining that process. And there's a reason why, one of the recommendations was, why doesn't NYSBA do a workshop or provide better training on how to write
A resolution.
Thank you. Because a lot of people don't know how to do it, and sometimes, and like, I know sitting in the, because I go through them in the National Suffolk meeting, and we read through them, and some of them aren't even English. Like, it's real, I mean, there was one resolution that contradicted itself in the same resolution, like, it asked for, it was just, it's kind of bizarre. And it was discussed that making changes, because in this meeting, and there's one board member, God bless her, she's 85 years, I think she's been a school board member, she's 85 years old, I think she's been a school board member for 42 or 43 years. I think she's been a school board member more than half her life. And she stayed up until 11:53, and she was piping mad that she couldn't get a question in. And then it was
Yeah.
also noted that Jay Warona never got up from his screen once in 6 hours, so.
Well, that is true, and
And
the president too. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how they did it. I mean, we were home, we could get up and walk around, but, yeah, there's definitely room for improvement.
Yeah, it was
and-
it was a big topic of discussion, so I would be shocked if you didn't see some significant changes. One of the reasons that Catherine Romano was our Area 12 director, one of the representative from this, but the reason they won't make recommendations or spit them back is they don't want to be seen as an organization that's trying to, steer the resolution in a certain way, but clearly something has to be done. If you've never read through these resolutions, I mean, it's tough in a room with 10 reasonable people to discuss it. I can only imagine with how many people were on?
300.
You see, I was say like,
304.
yeah, I mean, that's just,
On Zoom.
yeah, on Zoom, and you had, like, I guess,
The quorum was 200, the required amount to stay on the call. By the time we finished, it was about 275.
which was the stunning fact that they kept a quorum
Yeah.
for 6 hours.
Yeah,
'Cause-
because last year we didn't keep a quorum, and we had to just stop the meeting. So, but anyway, yes, and it gets very formal because they have to follow Robert's rules to a T, and it's just so belabored. But anyway, room for improvement, and, but certainly good work that was done. Also attended Facilities and Finance Committee meeting, very informative meetings. And then I finally got to visit 2 schools this week. I went to Frank P. Long and also went to Belport Middle School, and very impressed with the work done there at the Belport Middle School teachers just sat up and did a thumbs up. But the courtyard, I went there specifically for the courtyard because I hadn't seen it yet. And it is everything that you said it is. So, and I do see where Mr. Pirro wants to paint the columns now. They definitely do stand out because everything else is so pristine, so nice work there. And the school, both schools just looked immaculate this year. Each year they look better and better, and this year was no exception. And then we had our board retreat on Wednesday night, on Wednesday the 18th, and the superintendent went through his presentation that he gave at his last superintendent's conference on how the world has changed. And also very informative, and the board really benefited from it. So it's good, team building exercises, and something that we enjoy when we do it, and only wish we had time to do more. So thank you for
Appreciate
that.
that, thank you.
Okay, that brings us up to, our data presentation. Who's gonna lead that off?
So at this point, it's my pleasure to introduce Ms. Beth Doyle, Assistant Superintendent, Curriculum, Instruction, and I believe accountability too, right?
Accountability.
All right. Just gonna grab some of my notes. These are the easy ones.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Santana, good evening, members of the Board of Education, the South Country community. It's my pleasure this evening to present to you our data from the 22-23 school year. There are a lot of slides here. I know you had access to this data in advance, so I won't be going through in detail every slide in the interest of time. Really just be giving the headlines of the trends of what we're seeing and how we're reacting to the data. So data tells a story. We're going to start with what we're celebrating, and we have a lot to celebrate this year. I'm very honored to present this information. The data tells us what we need to focus on now, and then what action we're taking. So you've seen this visual before. Our goal is to improve student outcomes, and how we do that is, which is our North Star, is we look at our board priorities, our strategic plan, we dig into our data, both qualitative and quantitative, and we build our improvement plan. In our case, we have a district comprehensive improvement plan because we are a target district. What that means is that we're not meeting certain metrics for some of our groups of students. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. But even if we weren't a target district, we would still have an action plan because that's what good districts do. So, what are we celebrating? So we had 3 schools that were on the list with the state. And what that means is that each school is required to do an improvement plan because they're not meeting certain benchmarks for our students. And we have 3 schools that have made tremendous progress. The first is Brookhaven Elementary School. They are now in good standing, which is a huge accomplishment. And what that means is that we are no longer required to do an improvement plan for the state, and that stereotype threat that comes along with being on the list is removed. So a huge congratulations to Dr. Raymond, Mr. Cavaluzzo, the team at Brookhaven for all their hard work. And as you can see here, hard work can also be fun. What came along with being on the list is you are provided with resources. So there's funding, and there was also a coaching opportunity, which we took advantage of. Dr. Raymond completed that application in collaboration with our BTA to create a dual language coach position. And you see there on the right, Jessica Weinberg in the flower dress was our dual language and ENL coach from last year, and that was through the grant. And with the support of the superintendent and the board, that is now a full-time position, K through 6, supporting our dual language program. They did tremendous work. The state was so impressed with what was happening at Brookhaven that we had visits from many other districts to see what we were doing. So again, congratulations to Brookhaven, the students and families and the staff there.
What were some of those districts that visited us? Name one.
And I think Riverhead was one.
Okay.
But upcoming, we just got a request from the 3 Village School District to come to see our practices.
Yes.
And I know a lot of people compare and contrast, but look who's going where. Just saying.
Very well. Thank you.
Vern Kritz is another school that is now in good standing. Amazing work by Ms. Mazziati and the staff there. And I can't forget our director team who support the implementation of these improvement plans as well. Thank you to everyone there. We initially were told we weren't off the list of Vern Kritz, so we filed an appeal, which you're allowed to do, thankfully. And then there's this waiting game of, are we off the list, are we off the list? And I had the pleasure of telling Mandy via text message, which you can see there, that she was off the list. She was very excited and trying to contain herself during a virtual PTA meeting. And I thanked her for her hard work, and she reminded me that this is a team effort, and it really is. And we're just so proud of the work that this whole team has done there. And then last but not least, Bellport Middle School. We were still on the list, however, we moved up in status. So we were initially a CSI school, which means comprehensive school improvement, where many groups were not making progress. Now we're an ATSI school, which is additional target support, which means that we just have 3 groups that we're keeping an eye on, specifically in math achievement. We know all of our kids struggled because of the pandemic in math, missing those foundational skills. So we do have an improvement plan that we're implementing at Bellport Middle School. And once you have one school on the list, you also have to do a district improvement plan. So we created our DSIP, which is our roadmap. You've seen this visual before. The roadmap really is actionable and measurable, and as you can see, has helped us to get off the list for 2 of our schools. So we will continue that. We have 3 priorities or goals in the DSIP that we implemented last year. The first is around student attendance, because if kids aren't in school, they can't learn. The second is around creating a culture of care, which I'm going to get into more detail. And the last year was ensuring access to learning for all students through instructional best practices. So what does culture of care look like? That's implementing our FCL programs, that's implementing our equity cycle, which are the belonging surveys and the empathy interviews, and of course, implementing our restorative practices. We have an amazing restorative practices team now, supported the board. Last year, we had a 6 through 12 facilitator, that was Kai Watkins. This year, he's now K through 12, and a robust team of coaches, including bilingual coaches this year. And they've done a lot of work that I just want to talk about quickly. So on the right, you'll see this was a team building trip that some of our kids went on, and this was planned by our RP team for team building. There was ropes courses, really to build relationships. On the bottom left, you'll see we have restorative practices rooms now in all of our buildings. That is the room at Burn Crits. They're really well outfitted. That was with the help of our school improvement grants that we had for being on the list. Restorative Athletes is another program that we're continuing. This is when our varsity athletes go down to the elementary buildings and they're supporting students in the classroom with themes aligned to our SEL program, Second Step. Some amazing data that we'd like to share from last year. As you can see, we've really made an impact. So our RP team conducted over 120 restorative conversations. Those are conversations that are facilitated by either Kai or one of the coaches to repair harm, because there was some incident or that happened between either students or staff, and that's a huge number. And that really what is meant to do is to drop any repeat offenses. If you see on the bottom line there, there's a number of students with repeat suspensions dropped by 45 students. That's compelling, because really that's what this work is about. And just to clarify a misconception, restorative practices is not about no suspensions, right? This is not about eliminating suspensions. Of course, there are things where kids make poor choices and they should have a consequence. What this is about is not repeating those poor choices and repairing harm and building relationships. So the two have to work hand in hand. And then you'll see there some of the other numbers of decreased suspensions, in school, out of school, and superintendent suspensions have decreased. So some really great work by this team. This is our second year implementing the Seal of Civic Readiness. 95% of our June graduates earn the seal, and we're really proud of that because this is a program that's available, a pathway that's available for all of our students. This isn't an honors or an AP program. This provides access for all of our students. We're really proud of the work that our teachers and Jackie O'Hagan, our director.
She's beaming over there as you're speaking.
What's that?
She's beaming as you're speaking.
The nicest just to quickly touch on this is the assessment that our ELs take, our English language learners, to assess their English language proficiency. We take this every year, and the 4 modalities of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Up means they moved up a level. Same doesn't mean that they stay the same. They stay the same level, but there's still can be progress within that level, and down means they moved down a level. So we have over 660 kids take the nicest lat last year, which is a huge number. And we're just proud that our students are making a lot of progress. Graduation rate is important to talk about because that's the ultimate goal. We did see a dip last year. We were expecting that. We weren't surprised. You know, part of this is students not attending. So that's the reason that we're focusing on attendance. And about 15% of that number of non-grads are ELs. Our kids are coming to us much older, and they don't have the gift of time to be able to gain language acquisition. You know, to take the ELA Regents, it's academic vocabulary, which takes about 3 to 7 years to really be able to be proficient in academic vocabulary. So that's where, you know, our ELs are struggling. Unfortunately, it's that ELA Regents that really is difficult. So hopefully the Blue Ribbon Commission is looking at ways to support our ELs so they can graduate. I always like to take a look at NAEP. That is a dipstick of how we're doing nationally. And as you can see here, that the score declines nationally are really due to absenteeism. Again, another reason why we're focusing on attendance. All right, quickly to go through our grades 3 through 8 assessment data. As Mr. Santana pointed out, it's important that our kids are taking this test. That gives us great information on how to support them. We are trending up each year. We're about 5% higher than we were last year on participation. And as you can see, the kids in the lower grades take it more than the kids in the upper grades. But it still is a good, it still gives us good information. The headline in both ELA and math is that we are trending back to where we were pre-pandemic. There is one outlier, which is third grade. And I can tell you that this is because these students were in kindergarten during the shutdown. And I can speak from personal experience, my daughter was in kindergarten during the shutdown. And I was her principal. And we didn't do a very good job. It wasn't here in this district, but it's very hard to teach a kindergartner or a first grader how to read over Zoom. So we're seeing that impact here. But everyone else, as you go through the grades, we're either where we were pre-pandemic, which was 18, 19, or we're faring better, which is great. So we're closing that gap. It's important to look at our subgroups. I don't love the word subgroup. I just wish it was just called group, but it's a state term. Part of the reason why we're on the list is because some of our groups are not making progress, so we want to make sure we keep an eye on this to support all of our students and make sure they have access to our content. Participation rates for math are a little less than ELA. My theory on this is the ELA test is first, the math test is second, the buzz gets out, oh, you can opt out, and then kids start opting out.
One of the things I also want to point out, if a child reports for the first day of testing and decides not to come back,
Yeah.
they count towards our
They do.
participation rate. And we saw quite a few kids, especially at the middle school level, come for the first day and decide, hey, mom, dad, I'm not good to go the second day, and actually stay home. And their grades also count towards our ballot.
Yes, thank you. Oops, this is very sensitive. So this is the overall picture for math 3 through 8. Third graders are doing a little better in math than they were in ELA, but it's a similar story here. And then as you go through each grades, we're either back to where we were pre-pandemic or we're faring a little better. And this is our math subgroups. Again, taking a look at this is important, especially at our middle school level, because this is why we're on the list. Science is not a great sample size here. Only 33% of our kids took the test. And the test is completely changing. So this point is almost moot. The science standards that came out in 2016, we're at the point where our students are now going to be taking assessments aligned to those standards. This is the timeline for the changes. So the elementary test used to be 4th, now it's 5th grade. The 8th grade will take the new test. Earth, space, science in 2025 is the old earth science test. Biology is the old living environment. Remember, it used to be biology, and then it was living environment, now it's biology again. And then chemistry, physics. So what I love about the changes in science, we're really seeing this in all content areas, is that this is really less about content and more about skills and practices. And we know that our kids have information at their fingertips. AI is doing a lot of work for them now, so it's important that they're able to critically think and be able to, use skills and practices instead of just regurgitating content, which is really how I see these shifts, and we're seeing it in social studies too. So the ELA regents, we talked a little bit about our Ls and how they're impacted by this. Some of our non-grads, that's all they needed was that ELA regents. We're a little far off from where we were in 18-19, and we're putting a lot of things in place. We've revamped our 9 through 12 ELA units. We've had a homegrown institute over the summer with TC to plan strategy groups. There's a lot more L, professional learning for our teachers. All teachers are teachers of Ls now. So that's really how we're addressing this.
I just want to pause you real quick just to make a clarification since we're mentioning L so much. So there's 2 things to consider. Number 1, English language learners have the option of taking a state assessment in their native language. in every language but English, because it's an English test. And I remember as a high school principal, I asked that question, do we get the Spanish versions of the English test? And I felt very foolish. But it brings up a larger concern that Ms. Doyle kind of alluded to. When you get new entrants who are coming to this country for the first time as a teen, you know, New York State will say it'll take them 3 to 7 years for them to become English proficient. But the ELA test is not an English proficiency test. It's a much more difficult and challenging test. You also need writing endurance. So on the one hand, the state tells us that, yeah, it's very sort of within the kind of the realm of you know, our realities that some of these kids will take 5 years, maybe sometimes 6 years to graduate high school, but we still get dinged every time they don't. Another piece of it is some of these kids, and this to me is sort of a credit to their character, have to work. And they have to support families, and they have to pay their own bills. And so a lot of them elect to go and join the workforce because of family pressure. You know, one thing that the public may not know is that if a student registers in our school and sets foot in our school for 1 day and don't come back, they're considered a dropout. So in my former school district, where 26% of my students were English language learners, we could never hit a 100% graduation rate. I would start the school year at an 89%. That was like my baseline. And that's provided every senior that was currently enrolled in that school year would graduate. So it's a challenge, and it's, you know, I think our mission here in South Country is to get a 100% graduation rate. You should always aspire for perfection and measure your growth, but I think that's a little nuance that people should appreciate. So it's not that these kids are bad kids or are not intelligent, but, you know, imagine, you know, you move to a new country as a young teen or adolescent child, and you have to pass 5 Regents exams to graduate. And a lot of our land grads are non-grads because they're missing 1 Regents exam. And my argument, and I'll say this, is not going to make or break their ability to be successful, contribute to society. So it's a big challenge. Go ahead, Mr. Tawani.
I just wanted to add, you know, it's so important to contextualize this at the district level as well. The fact is that we see a direct correlation between proficiency level in English and passing the English Regents, right? That makes sense. All of our students at the expanding level passed the Regents. Students that didn't pass the Regents didn't pass it because they don't have the English proficiency level yet. So what they need is time. But the fact that our expanding kids are passing really speaks to the quality of the instruction that they're getting at the high school level. And it is getting better and better every day. So that's really, really important to keep in mind. And we are addressing, we have 10 students that did not graduate just because they didn't pass the English Regents, and we are working to address that by creating a program and busing so that they can come back to school and prepare to take the Regents in January again and in June again. So we're not letting them go just because they're no longer in school. We're continuing to reach out to them and keeping them invested in that diploma.
Think about, you know, 10 kids out of 200 graduates. We had more than 200 graduates, but I'm just making easy math. That represents 5%.
Yep.
That's a 5% hit in our graduation rate because 10 kids couldn't pass 1 exam.
So they're doing great. They're working very hard on us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nat?
It's a lot of tests. So again, the theme here is that we're hanging where we were pre-pandemic in some places, and some places where we're continuing to need to do a little work. This test is brand new last year. When I talked about the changes in skills and practices, this is another example. The U.S. History Framework is really about knowing how to read. You really don't have to have memorization of information. It really is a reading test. The Algebra Regents, we're kind of back again where we were pre-pandemic. Algebra 2, same. Geometry, we're struggling a little bit. These kids were in 7th and 8th grade during the shutdown, which is where there's a ton of foundational skills that are taught that are required for geometry. So we are, you know, working to fill in those gaps. Living environment, we're again hanging where we were 18-19. Chemistry, similar. Earth science, which is changing. Physics, which is changing. So to me, this is, you know, we're not gonna be able to use this data next year to compare. So that's that's the Regents data. Advanced placement exams, quickly, what this shows is in 2023, so let's say 66, I can't see from here.
66.
66, which represents the number of threes or above. So in order to pass the AP exam, you have to have a 3, 4, or 5. I think the big headline with AP is that this isn't really about the test. Of course, we want kids to get the college credit, but we know that just engaging in this high-level content sets them up for success in college. So yes, the accolade and the college credit is great, but there's research that supports that if kids just are exposed to this type of learning and content, they do better in post-secondary.
Can I just point something else out? If you just look at the total number of AP2 students in 2019, that's a year before the pandemic, it was 174 total kids. We're up to 312 kids now challenging AP exams. And look at the number of kids with 3 or more on the test. At 2019, right before the pandemic, we're at 118. 2023, we're at 205. It's almost double the number of kids finding success in AP exams, and about double the amount of kids actually enrolling in these classes, which is a great accolade for the school district.
In 2020, the test was taken at home, so I'm just gonna leave that out there. Maybe there's a more comfortable space. So, the N represents the number of students, and the percentage is how many have scored a 3 or higher. So this is humanities, English language and comp, English lit and comp. AP capstone is interdisciplinary, which means more than one content. So in seminar, that is ELA and social studies, students earn a English credit for that class. Research is social studies and science, and they earn an elective credit for that class. What I'd like to point out is that these are our only AP classes that don't have any barriers to entry, and our kids are performing best. So there's no specific grade that you need to get in to take these classes. This is open access, which I think is very compelling data. Where if you want to take any of these other classes, you need to have a 90 average or higher.
I just want to make sure I understand. United States history, in 2023, the class had 78 students in it? Go back. AP data,
AP?
yeah, humanities.
Back one more.
Yeah, it had 3 graphs.
English or
No.
social studies?
Yeah, that
This
one,
one?
yeah. That US history,
Yes,
so 78 students took the class in 2023,
correct,
but only 36% of them
passed,
passed
correct.
Not the class, they get a 3 or higher on the test.
on the,
AP exam.
On the AP exam. Yeah, not the class, thank you.
So one of the arguments that, and I'm certainly a proponent of this, is sometimes you need to remove the barriers from these classes. I think they're kind of artificial. Some classes will have prerequisites that say you have to score 90 or plus in a prior class. My last teaching assignment was AP Psychology. I convinced my school to have open access to my class. I didn't care who the student was. I said, if you want to sit in my class, you can participate. And I said, I can't guarantee, proficiency in an AP exam for such a high caliber test, but I was certain that the kids could engage in the conversations and participate in the class. And I had a fantastic experience, and my kids did pretty well. And that's kind of a shift that a lot of schools are making to self-select. The idea is that kids, should have access to classes, and we shouldn't have artificial barriers like a minimum grade point average to access these classes. The argument sometimes will say was like, well, I don't want, students in my class that are going to sort of change the dynamic in the class. And in my experience, that's never happened. Kids who want to challenge a class are there because they're sort of have the motivation to be there. Certainly a kid is not going to sign up for AP biology if they have no interest in it, because then they're going to suffer through it. So this idea that, all of a sudden these classes are going to fill with kids that don't belong, it's kind of false, and it's never manifested itself. In my former high school, we eliminated all the grade point requirements. We had suggested prerequisites. Certain classes need prerequisites. You can't take geometry before you take algebra. That's just a sequence. But our number of AP scholars increased year after year. Participation increased. AP Scholars with distinctions continue to go up because the pool of kids was greater. That's something we really have to look, consider moving forward is, are we creating an artificial barrier for kids to challenge rigorous courses? Sorry.
Great, no, I wholeheartedly agree, and it doesn't sit well with me that we are standing in the way of kids wanting to take these higher level courses. Why should we be the ones to say no? If it's something they want to do. Okay. So these are STEM, biology and chemistry, calculus AB and statistics, environmental science, physics, computer science A, which is now offered every year, right, Jen? It was every other year, now we're offering it every year. And our art and design, this is a portfolio, this is not technically an exam. The kids did well there, and then world languages. The hypothesis here is that, so much of learning a language is speaking. And there are a couple of years where there wasn't a lot of speaking going on because of the hybrid model and the remote learning, so that's something that Monica's working on with the staff and ensuring that that is a huge part of what happens in the world language classes. So how are we addressing the areas of improvement with our district improvement plan for this year? Our first two priorities are the same. The third one is slightly wordsmithed. We're really focusing on student-centered learning experiences, which captures what we're really going after with what happens in a classroom. So we know that this work works because of our successes. And we also applied for some grants to support all of our efforts. The state offered 2 grants, RECOVES, it's called, recovery grants, to help with the gaps that the pandemic created, one for mental health and one for learning loss. We applied for both of those. I'd like to thank Jenna Restivo and Kai Watkins for their support in writing these grants. We also applied for a federal grant called Better Connections to support all of our RP efforts. I had hoped to have heard before tonight, but it looks like we won't know until November if we are awarded the grants, but fingers crossed. And I thought that image was perfect. Just ask, and hopefully you will receive. So just to wrap up our story, what are we celebrating? Well, the great work that we've done to date, and again, I'm just very proud of this team, the staff here, the teachers. These are huge accomplishments getting off these lists. What does the data tell us we need to focus on? All the things where our kids suffered from pandemic, math, core instruction, student-centered learning experiences. And how do we do this? What action are we taking through our implementation with fidelity of our improvement plans?
Thank you, Ms. Doyle. And the reason we included our restorative practices piece, because what we're learning is that when students feel more comfortable and have a sense of agency in schools, they perform better. And that's a variable we cannot deny. And so, yeah, we talk about pedagogy and teaching strategies, but that culture of care is vital for the success of our students as well. It's all kind of interconnected, so it's valuable work. But I want to thank Beth. This is a lot to Ms. Doyle, I should say. This is a lot to sort of process. I'm always kind of somewhat overwhelmed and pleasantly surprised at the amount of work that comes through our office and all the initiatives that we kind of take on. And I will say this, I've said it before, we're so way ahead of the curve of other districts that it's pretty remarkable. I mean, when I sit in superintendent's meetings and they talk about challenges they're having or things they're contemplating, oh my God, I'm like, we've been doing that for a couple of years now, especially when it comes to our equity work and giving access to our students. So thank you, Beth Doyle. And I want to say a big birthday shout out. Her birthday's tomorrow. So happy birthday.
Thank you for
We moved the board meeting for you. You can celebrate your birthday with your family. Happy birthday. Great job. And a great job to the entire team. I met with the directors this week. We don't have the resources. When I look at districts like Wheatley Heights, that 95% of their budget comes from their taxpayers because their tax base is so high. And the work we do here and the services we provide across the board, from special education through our STEM, ELA, it's remarkable, and we should not take it for granted. And being on this list doesn't mean that we have a bad community or bad teaching staff. That's something I want to emphasize. It means that there's work to be done, it means we have challenges, but we're definitely going to rise to that challenge. So I feel very proud to be a part of this district and really fortunate to work with such an incredible team. Thank you. And thank you, Board of Trustees, again. It's Board Appreciation, but thank you all for your support as always.
All right.
Thank you.
And that brings us to, no more cards, okay. Any closing remarks? No closing remarks? Guess what that brings us to? The conclusion of our meeting.
Trustee Trent, that was fast.
Motion by Trustee Trent, seconded by anybody?
Yes.
Seconded by Trustee Flippin. All those in favor of being adjourned, we are adjourned. Thank you very much
Thank you.
for being here tonight. The support of all the directors is well